trust gets built in the times of adversity, I think. It doesn't have to be extreme adversity, obviously, but.
So we have a question that says, it seems like building open organizations requires trust. What are some ways I can begin building that trust amongst managers, leaders, and team members?
It's a really good question. In response to trust, I think my first response is always to think about the things that you learned when you were a little kid, about politeness and listening to people and including other people, sharing. Seems really basic, but I think that as we grow up, we start to put on different masks. We kind of hide who we are, and some of our authenticity gets a bit lost. And it's really hard to trust people if you feel like they're not being authentic. And so I think, finding ways to be vulnerable with your teammates or, with your colleagues is a really good place to start when it comes to building trust.
Our community has discussed at length and written on extensively. So I'll include in the show notes for this episode a couple links to previous writing at opensource.com. We've got a great article from Open Org Ambassador Ron McFarland on creating trust, sustaining trustful environments. Writer Mary Jo Burchard also wrote an article on trust and what makes for specifically trustful meetings. Right, meetings where people tend to feel psychologically safe to venture new ideas. So I'll share those in the show notes for this episode in case anybody's interested. But one of the things I'll say that's been guiding our discussion over the last couple of years has been the reciprocal relationship between trust and openness. Right, we've had discussions about whether trust is a precondition for openness. Right, can you only be open once everybody trusts one another? Or is openness a precondition for greater trust in your organization? Does openness lead to more trust? And I think the answer is both, right? I mean, because when you don't begin life as an open organization and you're trying to change requires trust, because people have to feel vulnerable, they have to feel unmoored, they have to feel unsafe in some ways, right? As they're making a shift or a transition, and so that requires a lot of trust amongst teammates. And so one of the things I found as a sort of motivator for trust is just consistency. Right, a consistency of thought and action, consistency of deed, right? Just consistency with I say what I'm going to do, I do what I'm going to say, and what I say matches what I do, right, and vice versa. And that kind of consistency is one thing I've found builds trust in an organization.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point too, because it's you can't really build trust when things are going well. I think when you really build trust is when something goes wrong or, there's some bad thing and people see you, sticking to the values. You're not saying, oh, let's be open and, be candid with each other. And then the first time somebody does, you chew them out, you're like, how dare you do that to me? You have to, trust gets built in the times of adversity, I think. It doesn't have to be extreme adversity, obviously, but, I think you just have to keep being consistently showing that you believe in these principles and you're, behaving, in accordance with them. And it takes time.
I think intention is also like another thing I would throw in here. Well, the intention and then the behaviors, because I think any interaction we have as humans now, we need to be mindful to think about our intention of what we're doing in that experience or environment that we're creating, right? So we talk a lot about positive intent in open organizations, but to go past that, I think everything has to have some sort of intention behind it. And then the behaviors that go with that is really important, because I think that we all have a perception in our own experience. So even if somebody is doing their absolute best as being vulnerable and representing themselves authentically and being transparent, it still is going to be perceived by the other party through their lens and through their set of experiences. So I think there's a big factor around our behaviors, especially the open behaviors, in terms of building that trustworthiness, but then as well as the intention that we put out there. And I think being clear about it's really important. Like, why are we not, like, we know what our intention is, but if we don't share that and communicate it more with our teams to understand, like, here's what we're doing, here's my intention in this thing, then it's really hard to get other people to kind of see that for what it is and to trust it and to build that. And I know, Laura, you talk a lot about like SCARF models and how we build psychological safety. And I'm sure we can put a link for everybody here too, because it's just a great jumping off point if you're uncertain to what does that even look like? You know, psychological safety sounds like a really big thing. And it is, but even looking at things like these models to get started are really important for teams. And I think, Bryan, you just to tie that to something you said about change, which is constant, it creates that discomfort in people of not feeling safe or being that like kind of unmoored, I think is the word you used, is we get real floaty and we don't know what we're anchored to. And if you're in that liminal space and you're not anchored to anything, some people are not comfortable with that. I might be like the only weird person on the planet actually enjoys that. So most people don't. And so that's why that communication of intention and building of the psychological safety and the trustworthiness with our team members is really important.